Yeah. They say I walk like a king, talk like a king. You can act around now, say the same thing. They chasing the fame, they all want the name. But they ain't got what's running through these veins. Make way for the king. Make way for the king. We're not the same, we're not the same. We're not the same, we run everything. We're not the same, we're not the same. They ain't got what's running through these veins. Make way for the king.
Welcome into the Frogs Today pregame show presented by Veritex Bank. Big 12 Championship edition as the Horned Frogs take on the Kansas State Wildcats out here in Arlington at AT&T Stadium. We're here, Frogs Today, Jamie Plunkett alongside Coach David Bowden, Marshall Newhouse, and Melissa Triebwasser to break down the Wildcats and the Frogs for you today. But we're out here at a special tailgate. The TCU Barstool tailgate is happening right behind us. It's bumping. We got some students out here already getting ready to get rowdy in that stadium right across the street, guys. Very excited for today, but I want to start with a couple questions as we get into breaking this thing down today. Coach Bowden, I want to start with you. TCU's 12-0. After the events of Friday night, everything seems to be breaking in their favor. But before we get into today, how did the Frogs get here, if you can boil it down?
Yeah, for me, they got here simply by the most cliche way ever, and that's kind of really one day at a time, right? It's what every coach preaches, but they've actually lived it out, and really by taking care of business, starting back on that first workout with Kaz Gazzotti, right? They came in, they've had shirts that say details across the chest, and they've really lived by that creed. And they, whether it's nutrition, taking care of their bodies, recovery, yoga, all that stuff. All to me, it goes back to that, right? And they did a really nice job, this staff, starting with Coach Sonny Dykes, of connecting the dots between those things and winning a Big 12 championship, right? And it's really hard to do when it's, December and January and you're getting up early in the morning for those workouts. You've got to do a good job connecting the dots. They did that, and that's why they're here today.
It's absolutely true. It starts back in January every single year. It starts in January, actually. It's just a calendar fact right there. But, Marshall, this is the second time the Frogs and the Wildcats are playing. After last night's Pac-12 championship, teams that have beaten a team in the regular season and then played them again in the conference championship, going back all the way to 2017, those regular season winners are 6-5 against that same opponent in conference championship games. What makes playing a team for the second time so difficult?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of things that go into playing a team a second time, especially in the conference. The Big 12 does their round robin. They've introduced this Big 12 championship game back in 2014, I believe. 2017, excuse me. But yeah, playing a team a second time, there's just familiarity there. There's a lot of the scheme that doesn't seem like much of a surprise, but I think in this particular case, you can kind of throw a lot of the stuff from the first game out. That was such a unique game in a lot of respects. You had the starting quarterback for Kansas State, Adrian Martinez, go out after the first drive. Will Howard, who's become their new stud guy, comes in. TCU defense unscouted. He's a new player. He's been there, but he's a new player. And TCU had to come back from 18 points down. So many things about that game are just not ordinary. So you take some things, you take the scheme, you take some of the stuff they do on defense, you take the guys like Deuce Vaughn, you take the guys like Will Howard that now you have 4 or 5 games of tape on, and then you apply that to this game. But I think usually I play in the NFL. There's division games. You play teams multiple times. There's really a lot of familiarity. This is similar but not the same. There's going to be a lot more at stake, and you're going to see a lot more, I would say, starting tighter and then things loosening up when guys realize it's just football.
You know, the Wildcats are 3-0 since Will Howard has been the starter. They're averaging almost 48 points a game during that time. Makes their offense incredibly potent with him and Deuce Vaughn, Malik Knowles. We've talked about, you and I, on Facing the Frogs multiple times this year about the potency of Kansas State on both sides of the ball. But, Melissa, you had a chance this week to talk to Max Olson of The Athletic to break down this game a little bit and kind of work our way into this game. Recap that conversation with Max for us. What did he think about this Big 12 championship game?
You know, I think the thing that I most appreciated about Max Olson is how much respect he gave to both Kansas State and TCU for making it to this point, playing in the Big 12 championship, and the quality of teams that these programs both are, not just from what they can do as an organization, but the talent up and down the roster. When you look at Kansas State, you guys mentioned Deuce Vaughn. He gets a lot of the credit, but what Will Howard has done over the last 3 games, like you said, leading the Big 12 in scoring offense right now, he has really established himself as one of the elite quarterbacks in this league, not just right now, but going forward. But the thing he told me about TCU, and speaking to Iowa State staffers, said that this TCU roster is the most talented team that program has played since TCU joined the Big 12, since Matt Campbell's staff arrived in Ames. And so I think that we're getting overlooked. We're seeing TCU get overlooked a little bit, and it was nice to hear from that national perspective that the Big 12 is a really good conference, is a talented conference, and going 9-0, playing that slate and doing it in 9 consecutive weeks is something that TCU shouldn't be poo-pooed for by the rest of the college football world, but should be given a lot of respect. Another thing he pointed out, the athletic director at Kansas State, Gene Taylor, is on the Big 12 playoff committee. And so maybe that's part of the reason Kansas State gets respect up into that top 10 heading into this game. Maybe, just maybe, that helps TCU here, depending on the results of today, going into those conversations tomorrow morning.
Sure. I think it absolutely does, Melissa. And when we look at this football game now, Coach, when you talk about familiar opponents, as Marshall said, and playing a team for a second time, we broke down film on Kansas State this week. In about 30 seconds, encapsulate what makes Kansas State such a potent offense.
Yeah, I think offensively, I think offense coordinator Colin Klein, we're all familiar with back in his days as a quarterback at Kansas State, does a great job creating matchups. And so if you look back last game, they ran a bunch of unbalanced stuff, and they put the running back, and they matched them up, both running backs, DJ Giddens and Deuce Vaughn, which are both more than able pass catchers out of the backfield on linebackers. And so it's going to be important that they get these things matched up versus the safeties they have on the field to really get some help there, because it just was an unfair matchup, especially that first half last time.
You're absolutely right. And Marshall, I know you always love talking about the offensive line. The Frogs have had the same starting 5 on the offensive line every game this year, an impressive feat when you consider the last few years of injuries at that position. When we talk about a guy like Steve Avila, though, and this Kansas State front that's so powerful, and they're smaller, but they're fast, they're athletic, they're really strong. How important is it for a guy like Steve to have a really big day today?
Well, yeah, he's a leader on this offense. He's a senior, highly coveted. He's going to be a high draft pick. He's earned that right. He's earned all that. But Kansas State's defense is one of the best in the Big 12 and one of the best in the country. They've gotten better as the season's gone along, but you mentioned it. They're a little undersized, and so to make up for that, they do a lot of movement. They bring a lot of pressure. And so it's going to be on guys like Steve, Alon Ali, the tackles to have their eyes up. On a rewatch of the first game, there were a couple plays that were either play-action passes or guys where there was a puller where there were lanes open. So all guys have to be on the same page, but you talked about this being the same line that was on day one. That is such a rare thing. And to be a senior-laden, veteran-laden group, that's a big check in the Frogs' favor.
It absolutely is. And Melissa, first of all, show the shoes off to the crowd today, because the shoe game is absolutely on fire today. I love those. I just looked down and saw them for the first time. Threw me off. They're so fantastic. But, Melissa, when you think about TCU on defense, they've had a couple injuries in the secondary all year, but ultimately they've got guys that are on the first team, all Big 12 team this year, and Trey Hodges-Tomlinson and Josh Newton, 2 lockdown corners who have really made this thing go on the back end this year. When you think about a team like Kansas State and the threats that they have in Malik Knowles, some tight ends, Kurt Warner's son, Cade Warner, is on this team as well, and a guy that can throw like Will Howard, what do we need to see from TCU secondary, and specifically THT and Newton today?
I mean, I think the thing we've seen all season long is those 2 guys are up for the challenge every week, and the better the receivers they face, I mean, look what they did to Xavier Hutchinson a week ago. Obviously, different passing style, but they are not going to back down from anybody. I think the key, you mentioned the tight ends, If those two guys can lock down their matchups one-on-one and enable the safeties to help out more in the run game, enable the safeties to kind of cheat up for the tight ends, that's going to be the difference maker. So it's going to be really up to those two guys on the outside, locking down those talented outside receivers for Kansas State, and the safeties kind of being the problems everywhere else, creating matchup issues, having the speed in the middle to, if Vaughn breaks out on a wheel route, we know we're going to see that at least once or twice today, right?
Yep.
Those are the types of things where you need to be able to count on your two veteran guys on the outside that have been there for you all year long to be great today and be difference makers in that passing game defensively.
They've been great all year. Hopefully they will be great again today. We're going to take a quick break here on the Frogs Today pregame show presented by Veritex Bank. When we come back, 2011 defensive MVP of the Rose Bowl, Tank Carter, will join us here on the set.
In college football, everyone can throw, everyone can catch, everyone can run. But what separates great players from the rest, this is what the Heisman Trophy is about. Beyond stats, what defines a great player is their diligence to the game, perseverance through adversity, and hard work that leads to their competitive mindset. Great players possess a willingness to win above all else and a dedication to their team. This is the story of Max Duggan. It's not about him, and it's never been about him. For him, it's about the team. Max was a starter in his first 3 years at TCU. There were ups and downs in those times, both as a team as well as personally for Max. In the summer of 2020, as a result of increased awareness of cardiac issues related to COVID-19, Max underwent an EKG screening with the rest of his team. An abnormality known as Wolff-Parkinson's White syndrome was discovered in Max's heart. As a result, Max had to undergo heart surgery, and his future with football was up in the air. Not too long after, Max was back in the starting role. Max then had to face the departure of his coach, a situation which could cause any player to go elsewhere. But Max stayed at TCU with his teammates because for Max, it's never about Max. It's about his team and his community. He knew there would be a battle for the starting position this season. Max would ultimately fall short of the starting job in the beginning of the 2022 season. Where most would quit, Max did not. He never had a bad practice or showed attitude towards his team or his coaches. When the time came in the second half of that first game, Max stepped back into the position and has never looked back. Explosive throws and hard runs may be how someone could define the play of Max Duggan, but it goes beyond that. Max possesses the heart of a winner, the heart of a champion, and in his heart is a love for the game, his team, and his community. Outstanding players are not just the stats you see on the leaderboards. They possess an intangible spirit that is defined by the actions they take for their team, by a desire in their heart to compete not for themselves, but for others. They are what makes the game great. They are the ones whose stories ought to be told. They are the ones that ought to be recognized.
Welcome back into the Frogs Today pregame show presented by Veritex Bank. Jamie Plunkett here alongside Coach David Bowden and Marshall Newhouse. Our first guest of the show today is the Rose Bowl defensive MVP from the TCU Rose Bowl championship team, Tank Carter, linebacker. Tank, thank you so much for joining us here on the show today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
So as we get into this a little bit, this team is 12-0 going into the Big 12 championship, an opportunity awaits them beyond the Big 12 championship. I know these guys are focused only on today, though. As a member of the last team to go 12-0 in the regular season, talk us through how challenging it is to actually get through a season unscathed.
You know, throughout the season, like I talked about it last night, you can't really think about your record. You know, you got to take it one game at a time. When you start looking too far ahead or looking to try to win a national championship, it'll slip up on you. You know, whenever you're going through the season, you got to take it one game at a time, and I think it's all through preparation. You get ready to go play games each week, and don't start looking down the road. Look at each game that's right in front of you, and I think you'll have a lot of success doing that. But I mean, I think these guys are ready, man. I'm excited to watch them today.
I know it's always tough to compare teams, right? But fans love it, and so we're going to ask you just kind of where do you think this team stacks up with that great team that you were on?
I mean, I'm always going to say that we had the best team of all time, but
You're supposed to.
Absolutely.
You know, it's I think I see a lot of characteristics that we had. You know, these guys play for each other. You know, and more so than about trying to impress a coach or impress the fans. They care about each other and their family when they play. You can tell by the way they carry each other out there and pick each other up. And it's a lot of fun watching them battle because they do. They don't want to let those guys down beside them.
So you played in Gary Patterson's 4-2-5. There's a little bit different in 3-3-5. How much would you have loved to play in a D winner's position, be able to roam the field, blitz? He's leading the team in sacks. How much would you have loved to play that position?
Oh, dude, it would have been awesome. You know, I mean, just playing in the Big 12 alone. I've always talked about it. A lot of people ask about it. I would love to have just gotten to compete in the Big 12. And, you know, I would have loved to see how far we could have took it. I still think that we should have been in the national championship that year as a 12-0 team. Went 13-0, finished the season ranked number 2. But, you know, that's just the way it was. They always try to slight TCU, but we're going to show them what's up this year.
Absolutely.
So, Tank, when you think about this year's team, and you've talked a little bit about the defense, but you played with a pretty talented red-headed quarterback.
Yep.
And this year, again, in 2022, there's a pretty talented red-headed quarterback leading this version of the Horned Frogs. When you see what Max Duggan has been able to do this year and the growth that we've seen from him this year over the last couple of seasons, what's impressed you most about Max?
I mean, dude, his resilience and just answering back to everything that he's been through, you know, not losing his starting spot, but last year kind of trying to find different ways to get some stuff going. Then the heart issues that he had and battling back, and then now he's in the talk for a Heisman this year. I think he's done a great job just as a young man playing football, and not only that, but as a leader, you know, in the community, you know, talking to people, having interviews, the way he carries himself, everything. You know, I think he's done great at what he's been doing.
Flipping on the other side of the ball, obviously, as a linebacker, you know, taking a look at this group, it's really they've done a heck of a job all year long, not only in their ability but their leadership, right? You look at a D Winters, and you talked about him earlier, but he's been a signal caller for those guys, and then Johnny Hodges comes in, Jamoy Hodge, his ability to, at his size, to cover as well as take care. You know, they spy the quarterback with a guy like that. They've had him in coverage. And then you added Shadrack Banks here late as a fourth, as a rotator. You know, can you kind of assess the linebacker play up to this point for this team?
Dude, I think those guys, they're rangy, you know, and they're bigger guys. They can handle linemen. I think they do a good job of getting off blocks. And then to the characteristics of their personality and the way they carry themselves on the field, you got to find guys that you can put the team on their back and lead either each position or lead the whole entire defense or offense as a whole. And I think those guys do a good job making calls, making checks, and being leaders on the defense.
So much about defenses making adjustments. What have you seen about the way that after a drive or after the half, this defense comes out, they see what they've done wrong, and they fix it really quickly, and it's led to a lot of great second-half comebacks?
Yep, that's what I was about to say. I've seen how they go in and they make their adjustment, they come back out, and things that may have not been successful in the first half, they make those adjustments, and they're able to go back out and create success at halftime. You know, I've said it numerous times. They're a second-half team, and they come out and you can see it. They're ready to go. They make their adjustments, and they're able to play some really good ball in the second half.
You know, I can't let you go before we ask you about the play, the immaculate deflection there on that two-point conversion in Pasadena, California as the sun was setting. Talk me through that play. I know you've talked about it before, probably more than you want to at this point. But talk me through that play, what you saw, and, you know, there's the infamous cut, too, after that play of Gary Patterson walking out onto the field, pointing at someone. He was upset about something. So walk us through that play. What happened on it?
So, I mean, we had a safety linebacker combo blitz. We called it dogs back then. I think it was coming off the left side. I mean, as soon as they snapped the ball, the entire offensive line slid right to the blitz. They had the numbers on that side of the ball. There was really no way you were getting through unless you just completely plow somebody, but the numbers weren't there. They had a call for our play that we ran, our defensive play, and as soon as I got to the line and seen they slid everybody over, I just pushed off of the offensive lineman, took a step back, and he threw it right in my face. We actually, with that defense, we play man, and I think it was the free safety or weak safety. It was a weak safety at that time. He was actually on the other side of the field. He was supposed to be covering number 3 on the strong side of the field, and he was on the other side of the field. I don't know if he didn't get the call or what, but number 3 turned, and he just set up right in the end zone. It would have been an easy catch, just nobody there. And Coach P, that's all he saw. He didn't care that we stopped the play, made the play. He was pointing right at, not going to say his name. I ain't throwing nobody under the bus, but he was pointing right at him, and blew the call, but we made it work, you know.
And how nice was it to celebrate that on the field after that win?
Oh, it was great, man. It was great. And people talk about, the crowd and everything, thinking back, it wasn't until kind of when the game was over that you kind of looked up for the most part. And I don't know if Marshall felt this when we played the Fiesta Bowl, but walking out of the tunnel at the beginning of the game, I looked up for a few seconds. It's like, man, there's a lot of people. And then I don't remember the crowd the rest of the game. It was business from there on out. And then after the game was over, when we had won, that's when you kind of soaked it all in and realized, we just won the Rose Bowl.
All right, last but not least, you got a prediction for today?
I think we're going to win by 2 touchdowns, dude.
Okay.
I think they're ready, man. I really do.
Touchdowns.
I think they're starting to kind of catch their stride. I think they're confident. They're through preparation. They've become confident, and they're starting to roll. I think they've hit their stride later in the season. I think what they did last week to Iowa State was a statement to how that's going to go this game with defense.
Awesome. I love it. Carter, thank you so much for joining us here on the Frogs Today pregame show. Obviously a TCU football legend. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to take a quick break here on the Frogs Today pregame show. When we come back, Dave Campbell's Texas Football has a pretty awesome college football writer. His name is Mike Craven. He's going to hop on the show and talk about TCU and Kansas State.
Dave's Hot Chicken is a cult favorite and now has 2 locations in Fort Worth, Bryant Irvin Road on I-20 and Berry Street at TCU, both owned and operated by Horned Frogs. Mention the Frogs Today show and get 10% off anytime and order online at daveshotchicken.com.
The Flying T Club provides the everyday TCU fan and alum the ability to specifically support TCU student athletes. Flying T Club offers 3 levels of memberships. The Flying T Club is a nonprofit organization supporting the brand development of TCU student athletes through a series of unique event-based networking opportunities, which are exclusive to our members. These events provide a great social engagement tool for our members and student athletes alike. Follow them on Instagram at Flying T Club or online at flyingtclub.com. For exclusive interviews and content on TCU recruits, subscribe now at frogstoday.com. Any sport, anytime. It's your source for all things TCU. Only on frogstoday.com.
Simply the best barbecue in Fort Worth. Dine in, catering, or drive-through. 2900 Montgomery, just off I-30. Remember, the best barbecue in Fort Worth is at Railhead Smokehouse.
Welcome back into the Frogs Today pregame show presented by Veritex Bank. I'm Jamie Plunkett here alongside Coach David Bowden and Marshall Newhouse. Our next guest on the pregame show today is Dave Campbell, Texas football, college football writer Mike Craven. Mike, I know you've been busy all weekend. You were down in San Antonio last night for that championship game. You're up here in Arlington today. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Absolutely. I appreciate y'all having me. This is pretty awesome.
Right.
This is a great setup. Y'all look like y'all are having fun, so appreciate the invite.
Shout out to TCU Barstool for throwing the tailgate and inviting us out for our show. There are quite a few students back there.
They're accumulating. Everyone's here.
They're gathering. So, Mike, I know that you were down in San Antonio last night for North Texas UTSA. Tell me a little bit about that game, your impression of those teams this year, and frankly, isn't it a little ridiculous that a 10-win UTSA team isn't ranked at this point?
Yeah, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad at the G5 level in terms of the ranking stuff. I went to UTSA when we were still selling, undefeated shirts, because we didn't have a football team. So seeing 41,000 in the Alamo Dome to watch UTSA win a second straight conference championship game is simply something I never thought would be a possibility. Us having a football team, us being that good. Jeff Traylor deserves a statue, a lifetime contract, all that kind of stuff. So, it's just pretty incredible two in-state teams. So it's fun to see North Texas there as well. So it was a good game for the first two and a half quarters, and then UTSA just had too much talent.
Mike, you were down there at UTSA last night. You're obviously here for the Big 12 championship today. For those who don't know, Mike covers all of Texas football for colleges. So that's what is it, 48?
47. It'll be 48 when RGV starts next year.
So 48 schools, a lot of work, a lot of mileage. Right now, with the role that TCU is on, in terms of the recruiting world and that sort of things, just in terms of the state's perception, what has this run done in terms of competing with some of the blue bloods in state, in terms of getting the top talent and just how they're received by high schools in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think perception and momentum is everything in recruiting, and you can see it a lot. Just the guys they've got in to visit, the guys that you see on social media, that kind of stuff. I've known Brian Carrington forever. I was on the Texas beat when he was at Texas, and so he's always been really good at building momentum, building hype, that kind of stuff. And so I just think the more that you're in on those top 4 lists, the top 5 lists, and you just get that free advertising on social media and everywhere like that, it becomes contagious because you see one of your buddies or a guy that you camped with that is really good, and they're going to TCU, and it's like, well, I got to go see what that's about. And I think Sonny also helps with that as well. He's such a laid-back, cool dude, that he has that reputation around the state. So a lot of momentum, a lot of excitement, and I definitely hear about TCU more than I have the last 4 or 5 years on the recruiting trail.
Obviously, a lot of the success this season has been with recruits that Gary Patterson brought here. But talk about Sonny Dykes, and then you mentioned his connection to Texas. I don't think people are fully aware of the Dykes family's impact on Texas football. Talk about Sonny Dykes and kind of the vision looking forward with him being at the helm at TCU.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, my grandfather coached with Sonny's dad at Texas 30 years ago, and so he's been in this state forever. The Dykes name is well respected. We're getting USA chants back there that distracted me a little bit. But yeah, I always say that coaching changes are a lot like dating, right? When you get the opposite of what you had before, and I think Sonny's been that perfectly for TCU. He's brought in kind of a new energy, a different energy into the program. And there's a reason we move out of our parents' house at 18, right? Like, we're sick of that messaging. I think it's been good for TCU to have kind of a different cat in charge, a different vibe within the building, and it seems like it's permeating across the state.
So as far as kind of conference realignment, that constant musical chairs, where do you see Texas football in general, and then the University of Texas and TCU and the pecking order within the recruiting in Texas?
Yeah, I mean, I think Texas A&M are always up just budget and facilities and all that kind of stuff, especially with the NIL life, right? Like, money's become even more important. I think with the expansion of the playoff, teams like TCU and Baylor are in an incredible position, Texas Tech as well, because all you got to do is win your conference. And so you don't have to go to Georgia, you don't have to go to Alabama, you don't have to go to Ohio State or USC. You can stay in the state, win your conference, and go play with all those teams.
Yep.
Hopefully the expansion of the playoff kind of evens out the blue chip recruiting, because as we've seen over the last 10 years, it's just gotten worse and worse in terms of just talent,
haves and have-nots.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. And when you met with Coach Sonny Dykes on his first day on the job or close to it, his reception of just that Texas football brand, which Dave Campbell's is, right, because of his dad, Spike Dykes, and the relationship. Just talk to us about kind of how you were received walking in the door, just instantly because of the brand recognition and his deep roots in Texas.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't a shout out or anything, but the first day I interviewed Sonny Dykes, he had a stack of Dave Campbell's magazines on his desk behind. And I don't know if he knew that's because I was coming or not. But yeah, I mean, his dad was on the cover. He's been around the state forever. He's a high school football guy. You talk to Sonny, and he'll tell you, I wanted to be a high school football coach. He wanted to be like the South Lake Carroll head coach, stay there for 40 years, because he was sick of moving as a child. It just didn't work out that way for him. So I think he has a lot of respect for what we do, and it's nice to have somebody around that does that. Jeff Traylor, Joey McGuire, Sonny Dykes, those kind of guys have, grown up around us, been with the brand forever, and that helps me a lot, obviously.
And I think after year one, at least, TCU fans don't want Sonny Dykes to move anytime soon either, so he might have found his forever home. He can keep this kind of track record going. But Mike, as we kind of close out this segment, I do want to hear from you, your assessment of TCU in this Big 12 championship game today. In your opinion, what do the Frogs have to do to come away with a 13-0 record and a Big 12 title?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it starts with Deuce Vaughn, right? Like, on the defensive side, you got to figure out where he's going to be. It's not just him running the ball, it's how creative they are at getting him the ball out of the backfield as a receiver, finding different ways to do that. And then offensively, it's just a strong start, right? When TCU's gotten off to a good start, that offense is humming. We'll see what Quentin Johnston's like, what Kendra Barber health-wise is. I think the big thing for TCU on my end is, they got their bye week back in week 3. So they've been playing a lot of football. Yep. That blowout last week against Iowa State helped them because they were able to get some guys on the bench, get some rest. And so if they're healthy, it feels like they should be floating in the air, right? I mean, because this is a dream. I was talking to Travius, Hodges Tomlinson, and he went like 5-7, 6-4, 5-7 his first 3 years, right? And so they're playing for things that they thought they were going to when they signed up here. It's finally coming around, and so all those bumps and bruises should go away. To me, it's about the first half. If they can build a lead and not get behind, I think they got a real good chance.
And, after the results of last night as well, with USC losing to Utah, does it matter?
I mean, it always matters, right? I think when TCU and the PTSD and the helmets that are on the other side, right?
Sure.
When it's Ohio State, when it's Alabama, and when this is just an invitational. That's all this is. And so you never know what they're going to do. A blowout could get a little scary, but I think if this one's close, and I think that they're in. And they should be.
It should be.
Last but not least, what's your prediction for today?
I got TCU by 4. I'm a gambling man. The line's 2.5. I'm taking TCU and the points.
TCU and the points is what we love to hear on the Frogs Today pregame show presented by Veritex Bank. When we come back, we're going to continue to break down this TCU-Kansas State Big 12 championship matchup.
Texas-based Happy Water offers the best-tasting, sugar-free kids drink ever made. Happy Water comes in 4 delicious flavors that you can find at local retailers and on Amazon. Each pouch contains 0 grams of sugar, 0 calories, and 0% juice. Head to happydrinks.com for more information and to purchase Happy Water. That's HAPIdrinks.com. Live happy, be happy, drink happy.
For exclusive interviews and content on TCU recruits, subscribe now at frogstoday.com. Any sport, anytime. It's your source for all things TCU. Only on frogstoday.com.
Say hello to the water of tomorrow. Richard's Rainwater. Richard's Rainwater is 100% rain, refreshing, renewable, and the only ingredient we use in our water. Why rain? Because everyone deserves access to clean water, and rain is a 100% renewable resource available everywhere. Drink the rain. Save the planet. Shop now at richardsrainwater.com.
Welcome back into the Frogs Today pregame show presented by Veritex Bank. The sun is rising. The weather is warming up out here in Arlington, Texas today, which is pretty great. We got Melissa Treebwasser, Marshall Newhouse, Coach David Bowden on set with me. I'm Jamie Plunkett. Guys, we're going to talk about Kansas State TCU a little bit here in the game, a segment we do every week here on the pregame show. I want one offensive player and one defensive player for TCU that have to step up in order for the Frogs to win today. Let's start on the offensive side of the ball. Coach Bowden, let's start with you.
Yeah, I looked to a name that everybody knows and recognizes, but it's Quentin Johnson, and the reason for that is, in past couple weeks, obviously we know he's been nicked up, and he's really he's taken the first week, the part of the week off, and then kind of practices the end of the week, and then he gets to the game and it kind of tweaks it again, and so it's just kind of been this revolving deal here, trying to get healthy. And so for him now, this is a game where he can come out. He had last week off. By all accounts, he's healthy and ready to go. And so is this a game that he just takes over, right? We've seen him do that in spots throughout this year, and this is one that they're going to need him to do that. And I think, obviously, we all know that he's capable at any time. This would be a great time to do it. So I'd say Quentin Johnson on offense for sure.
It's always good to go with the leading receiver. It's a safe bet, and it's hopefully a good one today. Marshall, what about you?
That's a great name. I think the name that I've been championing all year, especially after watching the first game, rewatching and seeing the impact that he had, is Jared Wiley. He's always been, the minute he stepped on campus as a transfer from UT, he's been a mismatch. But he showed it. I think this is probably his most productive game, both in the field, catching passes as a safety blanket for Max Duggan, and then a guy who can score in the red zone, he can convert first downs. He's just such a weapon, and they actually used him quite a bit the first game. I look for Jared Wiley to have an incredible impact on this game. In certain aspects, he's uncoverable. Max can throw a ball. He has a wide catch radius. He's a big body, and as a way, Kansas State's going to bring a lot of pressure. They're going to do a lot of exotic things, especially on obvious passing downs. Jared Wiley's a guy who can get open. He can use his body to shield, and he's got great hands for a big guy, and then there's run after the catch. I think he's a mismatch. It would be foolish not to try to use him. We'll see if they'll key on him because of last game, but he can have a big impact on this game.
I do want to note that Marshall Newhouse did not pick offensive line this week. However,
that's a first.
However, he did pick the guy that lines up right next to him. Just in case. So
I can't stray too far from my roots,
And I don't know if you saw Melissa's reaction.
Yeah, I mean, come on, Marshall. Like, I've been taking Jared Wiley for a month. But you know what? That's okay. That's okay because I'm going to pull one really off the radar here. Not really. Max Duggan. Here's the deal. Max Duggan has been outstanding this season. He's getting all kinds of national attention, but he hasn't had that big statistical blow it out of the water game. And for those that were paying attention last night, the Heisman race for the voters that have not put their ballots in yet is wide open this morning.
Yep.
If Max can come out and have the kind of signature Heisman moment game that we all know he's capable of, not only will he lead his team to a Big 12 championship, not only will he lead his team to 13-0, he'll lead his team to the college football playoffs, and he will send himself to New York City on the highest note. I think Max is going to come and deliver that signature game, that performance that we all look back on and say, that was the moment.
We hope. We all hope, right? I'm going to go with the guy who, in the first matchup, had 153 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns, Kendra Miller.
We're going on a limb there.
Go out on a limb. If Quentin Johnston is a safe bet, Kendra Miller is probably equally as safe. So Kendra Miller has over 1,200 rushing yards this year. He has, I believe, 16 rushing touchdowns now. He is 2 games away from tying LaDainian Tomlinson's rushing touchdown streak. He's got 13 games in a row.
Yep.
Could make it 14 today. Could make it 15.
Yep.
Could make it 16. Who knows? Who knows, right? But Kendra Miller had 153 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns in this first matchup. TCU did everything they needed to do to get him involved early and often, and that opened things up for the receivers. It opened things up for Jared Wiley and for Max to sling it around a little bit in the second half. So give me Kendra Miller to establish a tone early in this game that the Frogs are going to come out and hit you in the mouth, and they're not messing around.
Here's the thing. I think we all kind of went with what we would call quote-unquote safe bets. But this is the biggest game of your season. You need your stars to shine the
100%.
brightest. And so I think by picking those guys, are the 3-headed monster on offense, Jared Wiley, who's been a difference maker both in helping out and blocking and in catching the ball. You need your best players to play their best, and I think that's what we're going to see today from TCU.
You're absolutely right. Let's turn over to the other side of the football now, though, on the defensive side of things for the Frogs. Coach, who do you have stepping up for TCU today?
Yeah, to Melissa's point, I'm going to stay with the stars, right? I in a game like this, but for a little bit different reason. I looked at D. Winters and really have a huge game. We all know, as Marshall, you mentioned earlier, he leads the team in sacks, so we have all that going on. But what he's done a nice job of is he plays on the line of scrimmage a lot more this year against these tight ends. So anytime there's tight ends in the ball, which we know Kansas State's going to play a lot with that tight end or H-back, he plays on the ball. He's a little bit undersized for that spot, to play. But we talked to him about it. He said, hey, listen, whatever it takes. And he's excelled there, especially on the backside. When ball's away with his speed, he's able to make some plays behind the line of scrimmage. I look for him to do that today, especially him playing on the line of scrimmage. It should be exciting and fun to watch.
We talked about already the impact that Deuce Vaughn can have on the game and what they're going to try to do with him. Not just handing the ball off, they're going to try to get him mismatches in the pass game. He's a good pass-catching running back. And to me, my defensive player is Jamoy Hodge. You can mention to me any other linebackers, but Jamoy Hodge is a guy that we're going to have to see open field tackles against a slippery, strong running back, and then not only that, but be in coverage, be in the right position to then rally and make a tackle. Because you're not going to stop them, but you need to be able to rally, prevent explosive gains, yards after catch, yards after contact. And Jamoy's had a great year so far. We've had a lot of shuffling around the linebacker room, a lot of guys who are new, but they've stepped up to the challenge every single week. I expect him to have a big game today. I expect us also schematically to kind of anticipate that and be in position for that because it is still a team effort on defense.
Kansas State relies so much on the explosive play, much like TCU. They're not going to get you kind of nickel and dime you down the field. They're going for home runs. Will Howard is a completely different quarterback under pressure.
Yep.
So my player of the game, my defensive guy to watch is Dylan Horton.
Oh, yeah.
He has been on an absolute tear the last couple of weeks. He might be TCU's most improved player on the defensive side of the ball. If he can get in the backfield, he can cause some problems for Will Howard, then TCU's going to be in a much better position defensively at every level than if Will Howard has a clean pocket to throw from.
Look, there have been a lot of transfers that have made impacts on this team this season. Jared Wiley, we've already named one. We've got a couple other guys too as well. but I think one stands above the rest. And we've talked about him all year. He's been a leader from day one. We saw a video of him talking to the locker room before the Texas game. Ride or die, bad boys for life. Josh Newton out here giving me goosebumps as I just think about him, because he has been an absolutely transformative player in the secondary for TCU this year. He, just last week against Iowa State, helped hold Xavier Hutchinson to his lowest receiving total, lowest yardage total of the year. And he is a guy that has come in. He was first team All Big 12 from Louisiana Monroe. And we had a chance to talk to him all the way back in the spring, Coach. And I know that he made an impression on you right away, because he talked about coming from Louisiana Monroe to TCU and the difference in university, just in the financing and the facilities and the ability to have what you need to have to run a top-tier football program. And he said, look, I don't fault Louisiana Monroe for not having what TCU has. Yeah. He said they did the best they could with us. I love that university. He had a square enough head on his shoulders to understand how important a degree is, so he waited. He actually entered the transfer portal in December, pulled his name back out, got his degree in the spring, and then entered the transfer portal
I didn't know that. Wow.
Right? And so he's a guy who's got his head on his shoulders, not just on the football field, but in life. And that impact has been transformative for this defense this year. He's one of the main reasons that they've taken such a step forward on that side of the football this year. And I'm looking for him to have a Josh Newton-style game on that football field today.
Yeah, and I think one thing that jumped out when you talk to Josh Newton, obviously we see his play on the field, like you said, and what he does off the field as a leader. But the one thing that stands out when you speak to him is gratitude, right? Yeah. He is appreciative of the opportunity. He's a humble guy. He doesn't take it for granted. He'll tell you, be the first one to tell you that he feels blessed to walk in that locker room each and every day. And when you have guys like that in a locker room who are grateful, who are not entitled, it's a big reason why we're sitting out here in front of AT&T and for the Frogs in the Big 12 championship.
And we're sitting out here at the TCU Barstool tailgate, where they got a ton of students out here watching USA and the Netherlands getting ready for the Big 12 championship game between the TCU Horned Frogs and the Kansas State Wildcats. We're going to take a quick break here on the Frogs Today pregame show presented by Veritex Bank. But before we get to break, I just want to remind you that if you're a TCU student and you have a tcu.edu email, you can sign up on Frogs Today completely for free membership, access to all of our exclusive content, videos written, everything else. Hop in the forums, talk about the football game today. And if you're not a TCU student, right now you can sign up for just $1. So head over to frogstoday.com, sign up, get into the forums. Coach Bowden's going to be in there breaking down all of the plays today. But we'll be right back with the Frogs Today pregame show after this with more breakdown.
Dave's Hot Chicken is a cult favorite and now has 2 locations in Fort Worth, Bryant Irvin Road on I-20 and Berry Street at TCU. Both owned and operated by Horned Frogs. Mention the Frogs Today show and get 10% off anytime. And order online at daveshotchicken.com.
The Flying T Club provides the everyday TCU fan and alum the ability to specifically support TCU student athletes. Flying T Club offers 3 levels of memberships. The Flying T Club is a nonprofit organization supporting the brand development of TCU student athletes through a series of unique event-based networking opportunities, which are exclusive to our members. These events provide a great social engagement tool for our members and student athletes alike. Follow them on Instagram at Flying T Club or online at flyingtclub.com.
Simply the best barbecue in Fort Worth. Dine in, catering, or drive-through. 2900 Montgomery, just off I-30. Remember, the best barbecue in Fort Worth is at Railhead Smokehouse.
Welcome back into the Frogs Today pregame show presented by Veritex Bank. Jamie Plunkett here alongside Coach David Bowden, Marshall Newhouse, and Maggie Hale joins us here on
Yeah, you know
set.
I had to join. Come on now.
Absolutely had to hop on the trailer to hang out with us. Maggie, we're here at the TCU Barstool tailgate.
Yeah, we are.
Quite a few students behind us here hanging out, having a good time, watching the World Cup, listening to the pregame show. Break down the scene for us here.
Okay, you know what? There are a lot of students here, and we've been here since 8 a.m. this morning. They are ready to watch the Frogs beat up on the Wildcats for a second time this season.
Of course.
Obviously, we've got the World Cup going on. A lot of students here, and we're all ready to just walk on in there and show them what's up.
You got to get that energy right.
The energy is here. Absolutely here.
And it feels like the vibes today are right.
The vibes are right.
Absolutely. All right, so as we kind of wrap up the pregame show here, though, I want to hear from all 3 of you your final thoughts on today's game and a score prediction for the Frogs and the Wildcats Big 12 Championship game. Coach, start with you.
Yeah, well, I think offensively, I talked about Quentin Johnson earlier, but there's so many weapons and so many different ways for this Frogs offense, really for this Frogs team to win. And I think today it's going to be the explosive thing. I think they've got guys back healthy on the outside. Darius Davis at the slot. We talked about Kendre Miller at running back, and this offensive line has been dominant. You mentioned Jared Wiley. You keep going on and on, and so offensively, I think it's going to continue to click, and they'll put up some points today. Defensively, I think they've got to get back to it all goes back to taking care of the backs out of the backfield again in the pass game. So I'm going to look to those safeties. They'll have a plan for that this time around. It's whatever the next wrinkle is from Kansas State. Will they be able to respond? Because you can't wait until halftime, in a game like this, in a championship game. It'd just be too late. But I expect them to do that, still keep it tight towards the end. So I'm looking at 31-27 Frogs.
Very nice. Marshall.
Okay, I mean, this is the second time they've played, but I'm asking you to throw that first game away. It just doesn't matter. These are two different teams right now. Will Howard's been their starter for a few weeks. Their offense is better. They have elevated their game. But guess what? TCU is also better, and they found ways to win at every step of the way. I don't think that stops today. Now, a lot of that is dictated by the health of the team, but again, health is also a mental thing. I think TCU, knowing that no matter what, they're going to have a month off to just mend their wounds. That'll be their bye week. There's no reason not to empty the chamber today on all phases of the game. I'd even imagine us doing a couple trick plays, something that takes advantage of the things that Kansas State gives us. But you look for our stars to be stars today. Melissa talked about Max having a backside shot to the Heisman today. That's real.
Yep.
Quentin Johnson, Blitnikoff on list. That's real. Kendre Miller. I mean, all those things are lining up today, and I believe TCU understands the gravity of the moment. And I look for the Frogs to win today. I have my final score is TCU 35, Kansas State 30.
All right. That's
Maggie.
a close one, too. You know what? I could sit here and be nice to Kansas State, but I don't really feel like it this morning. I think the Frogs are beating up on the Wildcats from the very beginning of the game. TCU and Max Duggan just solidifying his Heisman run. Last week, we saw them go for a 2-point conversion just because they could, and I think that's going to set the tone for today's game. I've got the Frogs holding K-State to 1 touchdown. TCU 21-7.
Okay, all right.
Okay, Maggie Hale with a hot take. Look, you didn't go 12-0 for nothing.
Yep.
You didn't get to the big championship for nothing. You've worked all year. You're focused. And like you said, Marshall, you can throw that first game out the window.
Yeah.
Like you said, Kansas State's gotten a lot better, but so has TCU. We talked about it this week on Facing the Frogs, Coach, about how improved Garrett Riley and Joe Gillespie have been at game planning over the last month of the season, getting these guys ready, making adjustments based on guys being banged up or out completely, and the Frogs' record is completely unblemished because of that. TCU, like you said, Marshall, is going to empty the chamber today. I wrote it on frogstoday.com earlier.
They agree with you.
They agree with me. They love this right now. But here's what's going to happen. TCU's going to come out, just like they did against Iowa State. They're going to hit Kansas State in the mouth. And it's all going to be about how Kansas State responds to that. I don't think they're going to respond well because TCU is a team of destiny. TCU is on a mission. TCU 38, Kansas State 24.
Okay.
Frogs by 2 touchdowns.
I like
I'm going with Tank Carter.
All right.
And I'm going with Mike Craven for the Frogs to cover and to cover by a lot today. TCU 38, Kansas State 24.
I love it. I love it.
All right, folks, that's going to do it here on the Frogs Today pregame show presented by Veritex Bank. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy the football game, 11 a.m. kickoff on ABC. We're going to be out here at the TCU Barstool tailgate for just a little bit longer hanging out. Might go watch a little soccer. Right, Coach? You love that?
Sure.
David's
He
a
only
huge
knows one type
soccer
of football.
fan.
Coach only knows one type of football.
Yeah, it's the one type of football, and it's the important one happening across the street at AT&T Stadium at 11 a.m. Kickoff on ABC between the Horned Frogs and the Wildcats for the Big 12 Championship. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe on the YouTube channel, like it, and share it with your friends. Subscribe on frogstoday.com. If it's a student, it's free. If you're not a student, it's just $1. Can't get a better deal than that for all of the best TCU athletics coverage out there. For Maggie Hale, Marshall Newhouse, Coach David Bowden, for Melissa Treewasser, everybody that helped produce the show, for our guests Tank Carter and Mike Craven, I'm Jamie Plunkett. Go Frogs.
Go Frogs.